Femi. Okay, you're watching the stream. Do you remember last October when there were demonstrations all over Chile? There were violent reactions from the police. The demonstrators were absolutely determined to bring about social change. The negotiations with the government have resulted in a referendum for a new constitution, and that referendum is on October the 25th. A little bit earlier, we spoke to protester and activist Dauna Totoro, and he was feeling hopeful. Let's have a listen.
Almost a year after October 18th and the beginning of the social outbreak in Chile, we young people in Chile continue to fight for the demands of the rebellion and to end with the inheritance of the Pinochet dictatorship. Facing the plebiscite, there are many of us who continue to denounce the repression of Piñera's government and the agreement for peace and the new constitution that was signed by the traditional parties of the 30 years behind the people's backs. And that guarantees impunity for the repressors. That's why we believe that we must continue to trust in our fighting forces, voting I approve, but fighting for a third alternative, a constituent assembly, free and sovereign, so that the working people are the ones who decide.
Unpacking Chile's upcoming referendum on the stream today. I'm sure you have a take. Jump into the comments section if you're on YouTube, and you too can be part of our conversation. Hello guests, good to see you. Cecilia, welcome back to the stream. You were here last year as a protester, and now we're going to be talking about the upcoming referendum. A lot's happened in a year. Cecilia, tell everybody who you are.
Yes, it's nice to be here again. Actually, I continued protesting till March. Yes, March. Just right before the, pandemic problem. I'm a Chilean journalist. I'm talking to you from Concepcion, a southern city from the capital. Also, I'm part of Amaranta NGO, and I work educating around gender issues, especially violence in internet.
Mm-hmm. So nice to have you. Alejandra, welcome to the stream. Introduce yourself to the world.
Thank you. I am Alejandra Matus. I'm a journalist also. I have a long career as a writer, investigative journalist, and I am currently in New York studying a master on creative writing.
Good to have you. And Carlos.
Hello, I'm Carlos Tromben. I'm also a journalist, writer. I'm specialized in finance, economics, and politics, and I'm talking to you from the Valparaiso area.
Good to have you. Carlos, I am looking at a headline from the New York Times from 12 months ago. Chile president responding to protests promises to address economic woes. So that was about 12 months ago. As an economist, Carlos, how did he do? How did the government do?
Well, it did poorly because when the pandemic started and the economic outcome was visible, they stuck to the so-called austerity narrative without anyone asking them to. So the reaction was very poor. It kept people without any significant aid from the government in terms of distress. So it forced people to ask new measures. And one of these measures was extracted reluctantly from government, which is the possibility to take some money from the pension accounts, from the private pension system, which was created by the dictatorship, and which is one of the main aspects of the economic model of inequality that is currently in the middle of the problem of what will be put into test in the referendum. What will be the outcome of this model of capital accumulation within the very few ultra-rich in this country, and all the people that make a living out of the status quo?
I'm just thinking about how many of the people that we spoke to for this show, and there were so many, and they were so young, and they had a very good idea of what they wanted. The protests are very broad, and they cover so many things. But Cecilia, as somebody who has been protesting and only been stopped by COVID-19, if you could clarify what it is that you need from your government, what would you say?
I need a lot. We need real changes. We are really tired of these, constant bandages they're trying to put in the very big wounds our country has. We are in a very unequal country. We have problems in almost every aspect. And as Carlos said, there's been very little helps to the people during this pandemic, for giving an example. And even I can access to this help, so I have to take money from my pension funds, like a lot of people did. So we are seeing like really a poor response from the government. We are tired of this system. We need to start over. But even if there's a lot of people asking for changes in the constitution, there's also a really big part of the population that is like really scared of changes. Or there's also part of the population that gets benefit from this situation. You know, that 3% that has the wealth, so they are against these changes.
Alejandra, do you understand the people who are against change? Is it they're just afraid that Chile is not going to be recognizable from the Chile that they grew up in?
I think you can compare a Chilean situation, taking all the difference, but you compare Chilean situation to what it was the apartheid. There is a minority. They have European last names, and they all live close by in 3 neighborhoods in Santiago. And they concentrate all type of power. They concentrate economical power, they concentrate the political power, and also the social power. And the constitution that was written under dictatorship managed to keep that in place, even though we have lived through 30 years of democracy. Actually, today is the anniversary of the last plebiscite we have in 1988 to overthrow Pinochet. So 30 years later, more than 30 years later, people are still asking what is central to democracy, that the majorities have the power, not a wealthy minority. And that's the main issue. And for that, you need to rewrite the Constitution, because any issue will crash against this wall that forbidden change.
Carlos is scribbling in his notebook. Carlos, share your notes with us.
I will. Yeah, I would like to come back to the resistance to change, which is it's a very delicate issue, because it's normal, it's expectable that people will be afraid of a new situation when you are used to a system throughout, like, let's say, the last 40 years. And one of the main lines of argument is that this system created wealth, that this system was able to get a momentum of high growth in the very first stages of this neoliberal experiment, which was enacted, as Alejandra said, in the context of a dictatorship, in the context of what would Naomi Klein call a shock doctrine, no? So what could we expect now? Because that high economic growth in the early stages of the experiment, it just lost steam. It lost steam through the 90s, and after each successive recession, the country was growing slower and slower until almost stagnation. And who did the defenders of the model blame? The teachers, the workers. We were not saving enough. We were spending too much. And who did endorse this spending spree of the middle class? The system, the banks. You know, and so we are the blame. We're to blame what happened, and not the guys who are in charge. The guys who designed public policy, the guys who privatized almost everything, the guys who exposed the Chilean population to environmental disaster, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, what set people off last October, as everyone knows, was a small increase in the metro fare, but actually what was at stake was the lack of trust for the institutions. whether government,
Um,
executive branch, etc.
Yes, yes, Alejandro, go ahead.
I would like to add that what is the stage is the profound meaning of our democracy. And in 1988, the slogan of the plebiscite of people that didn't want Pinochet to continue in power was the happiness is coming. And what that mean of what it was the mean of happiness, and the happiness is not just the right to vote. The happiness probably in the mind of many was to recover what we had before the dictatorship, and that was a constant gaining of rights through all 19th century, to all 20th century, excuse me, not just Allende. So all that was lost: health, education, public pension, everything was lost and never recovered. So the people lost patience.
So let me share this with you, because what you're saying very clearly is there is a disparity, to say the least, between the wealthy in Chile and everybody else. Have a look here. This is and this is headline is from September. Chile announced $2 billion package to help recover and create new jobs. Cecilia, is this going? I'm seeing Carlos nodding his head, but I'm going to put this to Cecilia first of all, because her list of what she needed change in her country was very long. Cecilia, you start, and then Carlos, you pick up. Is it $2 billion worth of job creation, creating new jobs? How will this help? Will this help?
For me, it's still just throwing some catch, but not fixing the real problem. We're still in a subsidiary system in which the states just have a supplementary role and can intervene in the economics. So now, in the middle of a pandemic, there's not only jobs losing and people losing their incomes. Also, there was an increase of the prices of medicines, of the food, and in the middle of a pandemic and with people with no jobs, and the state can do anything at all because our system, our constitution allows it. And as Alejandra said, these people that has the power, that has the wealth, they have a discourse from fear, and they're trying to give fear and also a lot of fake news to the workers, trying to not change the system. So for me, that news is like a mock. It's not reality for me.
It's too late and too little. It should have been done in March, in April. They had the sovereign bond issues in the SEC in New York. They could have committed 3 times that amount in March, in April. But they were sticking to that narrative of austerity. Austerity. We cannot spend more because we don't have the resources. That was not true. That was absolutely fake. This government is committed to low taxation for the rich, etc., etc., etc. So, and it's the outcome, as Alejandra said, of 30 years or 40 years of neoliberal policies that deprive the government, the state, of the tools to address this sort of crisis. In terms of distress, the people, the average family, the working class family, even the middle class family are on their own. Absolutely. So that's why we had to, as Cecilia said, we had to resort to our own pension funds. And now we're talking about second operation with pension funds.
Second return. I would like also to demystify the strength of Chilean economy. Chilean economy moves because of this pension fund. The pension fund is a huge amount of capital that is distributed every day between the rich companies, which in turn then lend the money. For example, the bank receives some money from the pension bank and lends the money to the worker to a very high rate of interest. So there is no real companies that you could say Chile is producing some kind of intelligence or adding value to the products. Chile is living on the shoulders of the workers, and the workers don't get anything in return. That's the reality, and the proof is that when the workers retire a part of this pension because of the pandemic and because the government didn't do anything, they spend the money back on the system, paying the bills, the credits that they have, and the economy boost. So without the workers and without the workers' money, nothing happens in Chile.
So let me just show you what the president of Chile was saying about the new measures that he's bringing in. Carlos says too little, too late on Twitter, and I'm going to use the translation because my Spanish is muy mal. All right, so the president says, with this law, together with the guaranteed minimum income, strengthening the solidarity pillar of pensions and unemployment insurance, we continue to improve our social protection network. So obviously, he is aware of what the issue is. Is this enough? Let me share two clips of the president of Chile with you. The first one was last year, almost a year ago, when he was pushing back at the protesters on the street, and the world was looking aghast at some of the human rights abuses that were happening. So, October 2019, let's have a look.
Not to anything or anybody who's willing to use violence and crime without any limit, even when it means loss of human life, who are willing to burn our hospitals, our metro stations, our supermarkets, with the only goal of causing as much harm as possible to all Chileans. They are at war with all well-meaning Chileans who want to live in democracy, with freedom and in peace.
That was last year, and then this year, United Nations General Assembly, this is when all the leaders get together, although they did it virtually this year because of COVID-19, a slightly different tone. Let's have a listen.
We have to learn from the lessons of the past, lessons that have taught us the value of unity, dialogue, cooperation and agreement. When all is said and done, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We also have to act, as I've said, with a sense of urgency, because there is no time to be squandered. We are firmly convinced that there can be no social justice absent growth and development, nor can there be any growth and development absent social justice.
Carlos, what did you write in your notebook?
No, I'm writing about this construed narrative about the enemy within. You know, that's very easy and cheap to resort to, because it doesn't stress all the shortcomings of this current situation and this government. They don't take responsibility for what's happening. It's them. It's the enemy within. They are destroying this country, and but there's no. You're right. You're right, Femi, about the president has changed a little bit the tone of his discourse agenda, but finally what's going on is this, as we're seeing right now, public health workers being attacked by police force, and that's the kind of dialogue he wants. That's the one. That's the sort of unity, national unity that he's trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. We need answers, and then we will get them.
And
you should be sure about
I would say also about the political measures that has been the custom to announce, big headlines and a large amount, but then when you see how the money is distributed, the requirements that are laid out for the people to apply, it's very difficult to get the benefits, and there are part of the money, for example, that was supposed to go to a small business went to big businesses. So people, it's really difficult to believe what he's saying, that the words that he's saying are going to apply in reality. He has lost that credibility a long time ago.
I'm going to get you to work hard, and I want instant answers because YouTube has questions for you. Abra Alista, thank you. Is Chile a developed country? Why is Chile suffering from these big demonstrations and protests? Cecilia, quick answer for that one.
For me, that idea of Chile being a developed country is more like a dream or a lie. It's like a hologram for me. It's like something in paper, not in the reality.
Alejandra, I would like you to take this YouTube question from Oldgreen. Thank you, Oldgreen. Politicians in Chile have the worst evaluation with the public system. Why would Chileans trust them for creating a new constitution?
Well, because the option of the plebiscite is people get elected to write the constitution, and that's the hope that real people representing the people that has been left out of Chilean politics can write the constitution.
I want to bring in Javiera because we're looking at hope for the future. A lot of the young Chileans that we spoke to are really hopeful. This October the 25th referendum, they're very excited about it. Have a listen to Javiera.
We can have the first constitutional organism with gender parity around the world and the presence of indigenous people. We are really hopeful with all these changes to redraw a new democracy and a new country.
Cecilia, but can a constitution do that? Your list was so long that you actually started to smile because you knew it was a really long list of what you needed changed in Chile. Can a referendum on a new constitution, can that give you everything that you want?
I think it's a first step. It's a first step for changing the system, but it's not the last for me. I believe a lot in the people, in the citizens, more than in political parties. I think this idea of a referendum with people not related necessarily to political parties, writing a new constitution, it's an advance, but not the last stop. And it doesn't mean protests or problems are going to magically disappear.
Alejandra, I really would love you to listen to Teresa, because Teresa, she bases her hope on the history of Chile, that perhaps this referendum could be a milestone in Chile's history. Let's have a listen to Teresa.
These protests were dangerous and violent places, not because of the protesters, but because of the harsh and violent police repression that we suffered in the streets. This 25th of October, we will be voting to change the political constitution that was imposed in dictatorship in Chile in the late 1900s. Most of the young people and most of the country hopes that the referendum leads to approving a change of the political constitution, and that hopefully this change is made by a constitutional convention, which will mean that we will be able to choose 100% of the people in charge of making this change happen.
Whoa, Alejandra, there's so much hope there, so much possibility. What is your gut telling you about the upcoming referendum on October the 25th?
Well, it all depends of what option wins, but I hope if it wins the conventional constitution convention, I think there is a real possibility of designing a new political system. And I think you cannot end a concentration of wealth if you cannot end concentration of power. If you redistribute the power, if you give power to the people, then the outcome of the political public policy will be different. And I agree, it's not the end of the, it's the beginning of the road. But without that, there's not possible to start walking.
All right, so I have 1 minute to share between Cecilia and Carlos. Cecilia, your hope for this referendum in a sentence is what?
I hope we can change this constitution, but because I can't stand anymore this system, and I can't stand to hear Piñera again.
Cecilia's over it. Carlos.
I hope this is the end of the technocratic order when we separated politics from economics, and we gave all the power to non-economists. The economists were not real economists. They were lobbyists for big money, for big capital.
Carlos, this is your last call. Thank you. All right, we appreciate you. I should always say that there's never enough conversation, never enough time for our conversation on the stream. Have a look here very quickly on Instagram at 16:30 GMT. We always jump onto Instagram every day after our live discussion show, and we will be bringing you Lucia Newman And if you can't see her on Monday at 16:30 GMT, you can jump onto the AJ Stream Instagram account and see her on the IGTV section. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.